The sound of the morning rain drums softly on the zinc roof of a small bungalow in Oyiri community, a quiet town on the outskirts of Port Harcourt. Inside that small house lived two brothers who had once shared everything, even dreams. Their names were James and John. James was the older one, calm and gentle like early morning dew. He was known for his easy smile, the kind that made you feel safe. John, on the other hand, was younger, bold, talkative, and always full of wild ambitions. They grew up without a father. Their mother, Mama Rose, sold bread by the roadside near Oil Mill Junction. Life was hard, and every day was a new struggle. James, the elder son, always stayed back to help his mother. He would carry trays of bread on his head, follow her to the roadside, and help her shout, "Hot bread, fresh bread." But John never liked that life. He would often say, "Mama, I'm not meant for this kind of suffering. Oh, one day I'll make money that will shock this whole community." And one day, he left home. At just 18, John packed his old bag and traveled to Port Harcourt City to hustle. He had no clear plan, only hope and the stubborn belief that life had something better for him. James remained behind. He learned how to fix cars from an old mechanic called Baba Okon. He worked hard, earned little, and lived quietly. He didn't have much, but he had peace. Years went by. James became known as one of the best part-time mechanics around Oyiri. People trusted him because he was honest. He would tell a customer, "Madam, no need to buy new parts, I can fix this one." And he meant it. He was not rich, but he had a good name. John, on the other hand, became successful. He started working with some men who imported goods from abroad. Then he got contracts with politicians. Money began to flow like a river. He bought cars, built a house, married a beautiful woman named Gloria, and moved to a big estate in Port Harcourt. He didn't visit often, but whenever he called, Mama Rose would dance around the compound shouting, "My son don't make 'em." But one hot afternoon, everything changed. James was under a car at the workshop fixing a leaking fuel tank. His hands were greasy, his clothes stained with oil, when his phone began to ring. He wiped his hands quickly and picked it up. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was weak and broken. "Please, is this James?" "Yes, who is this?" "This is Gloria," the woman sobbed. "Please, you have to come to Port Harcourt immediately. It's John. He's in the hospital. He's dying." James froze. "What? What happened to him?" Tears flowed in Gloria's voice. "It's his kidney. Please hurry." James didn't think twice. Without even finishing the repair, he cleaned his tools, told Baba Okon what happened, and rushed to the motor park. That evening, he boarded a night bus heading to Port Harcourt. He didn't have much money, just enough for transport and a few snacks, but he didn't care. His brother was dying. By the next morning, James arrived in Port Harcourt. The city air was thick and noisy, filled with the smell of fuel and wet dust. He looked tired and dusty from the long journey. He didn't even go to eat or rest. He went straight to the hospital in Elekahia, where Gloria said John was admitted. When he got to the private ward, Gloria ran to him crying. She hugged him tightly and said, "James, thank God you came." Inside the ward, James saw his younger brother lying weak on the hospital bed. Tubes ran from his arms and machines beeped softly beside him. His face was pale. When he opened his eyes and saw James, his lips trembled. "Brother," he whispered. James rushed to his side. "John, what happened?" Gloria spoke quietly. "The doctor said his kidneys are failing. He needs a transplant." James turned to the doctor who stood near the bed. "What does that mean?" The doctor looked serious. "He needs a kidney from a living donor, and it must be from someone who matches him. Without it, he won't survive." There was silence in the room. Then Gloria said softly, "They already tested me, but I'm not a match." John turned his weak eyes to James and whispered, "Brother, I don't want to die." James felt his heart break. He nodded slowly. "I'll do the test," he said. 2 days later, the result came. James was a perfect match. The doctors explained everything, the risks, the recovery time, and the fact that he would live the rest of his life with only one kidney. James asked just one question. If I don't give him, will he die? The doctor nodded sadly. James took a deep breath. Then, I'll do it. That night, James sat beside John's hospital bed. The soft light of the room fell on John's tired face. Why did you come all the way here? John asked weakly. James smiled. Because you're my brother. John turned his face away as tears rolled down. I don't deserve this. Maybe not, but I'm not doing it because you deserve it. I'm doing it because I love you. The next morning, the surgery began. 2 brothers on 2 tables, one giving life, the other receiving it. The operation lasted hours. The doctors worked carefully. The nurses moved quickly. And outside, Gloria prayed and wept. When the doctor finally came out, he smiled. The surgery was successful. Gloria screamed with joy. She ran to James's room first. He was pale and weak but alive. When he opened his eyes, he whispered, "Is he okay?" "Yes, he's alive," Gloria said, crying. When James could finally walk after a few days, the hospital staff clapped for him. "You are a hero," one of the nurses said. "You gave your brother life." Even John cried when he saw him after the surgery. "You saved me," he said. James smiled weakly. "You are my blood." 3 weeks later, James returned home to Erie. Before leaving, John gave him a small envelope with 100,000 naira inside. "Just a small thank you," John said. James accepted it with a smile and went home. But after that, everything changed. John never called again. At first, he thought he was just busy recovering. He sent messages, called many times, but John didn't reply. One day he tried again, but the number didn't go through. When he called Gloria's number, she didn't pick up either. Weeks passed, then months. One afternoon, a friend from Port Harcourt called James. "My guy, I saw your brother. Oh, he just bought a new house in GRA. Big man life. He even drives a Lexus Jeep now." James smiled weakly. "That's good," he said. But when he dropped the call, tears filled his eyes. He sat outside his small house, his hand resting over the scar on his side, and he whispered quietly, "I gave you life, and you gave me silence." His health wasn't as strong as before. He couldn't work long hours as a mechanic anymore. He tried to survive doing small repairs, but customers had reduced. Poverty returned slowly, and loneliness filled his heart. One evening, he decided to travel to Port Harcourt to see his brother. He borrowed some money and boarded a bus. When he reached John's new office building, he waited outside for hours. Finally, John came out, dressed in fine clothes, surrounded by workers. James smiled and called out, "John!" John looked up, saw him, and his face changed. He pretended not to recognize him. James ran up. "John, it's me, James!" People were watching. John frowned. "Please don't embarrass me here," he said in a low voice. James froze. "Embarrass me? It's me, James. I gave you my kidney." John's eyes hardened. "And did I not give you money? What do you want again? Do you want to use that thing to beg me forever?" James's face fell. "I didn't come to beg. I just came to see you." "Then go home," John said coldly. And he turned and entered his car. The car drove off, leaving James standing like a beggar at the gate. That night, James couldn't even afford to return home. He found a cheap motel and sat alone in the dark. He touched the scar on his side, the one that still itched sometimes, and said quietly, "I gave you life, and you gave me shame." He wept until he slept. That was how the bond between the 2 brothers broke, quietly, painfully, like a rope cut by pride. But destiny wasn't done with them yet, because 2 months later, the same man who rejected his brother would find himself begging for that same brother again, not for his kidney this time, but for his life. And when that moment came, forgiveness would be the only cure.
The afternoon sun burned hot over Port Harcourt that day. The streets were busy with cars honking, people shouting, and the smell of roasted corn mixing with fuel fumes. But inside a cool, quiet hospital room in GRA, a man lay trembling on a white bed, sweat pouring down his face. It was John. His eyes were sunken again, and his breathing was shallow. The same man who once laughed loud at parties and gave orders to workers now looked like a shadow of himself. Gloria sat by the bedside, tears in her eyes. She watched the love of her life grow thinner each day, and the doctors could not explain what was wrong. The kidney was fine, the tests were fine, yet something invisible was eating him up. At night, he woke up screaming, shouting James's name. He would say, "Tell him to leave me alone. Tell him I'm sorry." But no one was there except Gloria. One night, she couldn't take it anymore. She called James. When he picked up the phone, his voice was quiet and tired. "Hello? James, please, it's me, Gloria," she said in tears. James was silent for a few seconds before answering. "Gloria, why are you calling me now?" She swallowed hard. "Please, he's dying again. He keeps calling your name. Please come." James closed his eyes. He remembered the last time he saw John. The shame, the rejection, the words that cut deep. "Why should I come?" he said softly. "Because you're the only one he listens to now," Gloria cried. "He's been vomiting blood. The doctor said nothing is wrong with his body, but something is wrong with his spirit." James didn't answer. He just hung up. That night, he sat on the small wooden bench outside his mother's house in Ogiri. The moonlight fell across his face. He was quiet, lost in thought. His mother came out slowly, her wrapper tied around her chest. "James, who was that on the phone?" she asked. "Gloria," he said quietly. Her eyes widened. "Your brother's wife?" He nodded. "She said he's dying." Mama Rose sighed deeply and sat beside him. "My son, I know what he did to you. But anger is a sickness too. Don't let it eat you." James looked away. "Mama, he threw me away like I was nothing." "I know," she said softly, "but you are not nothing. You are better than what he did to you. Sometimes God tests our hearts with the same people who hurt us." James didn't reply. He just looked at the stars, his mind full of pain. 2 days later, Gloria arrived at Ogiri. Her car stopped right in front of the small house. She looked thinner and tired. When James saw her step out, he didn't say a word. She walked up to him and knelt down. "Please, James, he's dying. He keeps seeing things. He calls your name in his sleep. Please come." James looked at her quietly and said, "Go home, Gloria." She burst into tears. "Please, I beg you. If not for him, then for me. I can't watch him die like this." James stood up slowly and walked into the house without saying a word. Gloria stayed there crying for a while before driving back to Port Harcourt. That night, John had another attack. He screamed so loud that the nurses ran into the room. He was shaking, pointing at the corner. "He's there. James is standing there, bleeding," he cried. Gloria held him. "There's no one there." John gasped for air. He said I should give it back." She was terrified. She called their family pastor immediately. "Pastor, please come. Something is wrong. He's seen things." The pastor came within an hour, prayed for him, and sprinkled anointing oil on his head. When he finished, he looked at Gloria and said, "Madam, this is not a medical problem. This is spiritual." "What do you mean, Pastor?" she asked. "There's a broken bond between your husband and his brother. Until it is fixed, peace will not return to this house." Gloria was confused. "But they haven't spoken in months." The pastor nodded, "And that silence is the problem." He asked for James's number and the next day he called him. "Brother James," the pastor said over the phone, "I know this call might surprise you, but I'm calling because of your brother. He's dying and only you can help him." James said nothing for a while, then answered softly, "Pastor, I already helped him once." "I know," the pastor said gently, "but now it's not about his body, it's about his soul, and yours too." James sighed deeply. "I'll think about it." He spent the night thinking, tossing on his bed, hearing his mother's words in his head. "Don't let anger eat you." The next morning, he packed a small bag and took a bus to Port Harcourt. When he reached John's mansion in GRA, he stood outside the gate for a long time. The guards didn't even recognize him. When they called Gloria, she ran out quickly. "James, oh thank God," she cried. He entered the house quietly. The marble floors, the chandeliers, the air-conditioned halls, everything looked rich and cold. When he stepped into John's bedroom, he froze. John was lying on the bed, pale, weak, and shaking. When he saw James, his lips trembled. "Brother," he whispered. James didn't move closer. He looked around the big room, the gold curtains, the fine furniture. Then he looked at John and said softly, "So this is where you brought my kidney to?" John swallowed hard. "I was wrong, brother. I'm sorry." James's eyes were cold. "You gave me silence for months. You treated me like dirt. You forgot the hand that saved you." John began to cry. "I was proud. I was foolish. Please forgive me." James stood still, his heart full of pain. Gloria, who had been standing near the door, suddenly spoke. "James, you don't know everything." He turned to her. "Then tell me." She hesitated, then took a deep breath. After the surgery, when John got better, he stood in front of the mirror one morning. He saw the scar on his side. He stared at it for a long time. Then he started crying. "Why?" James asked softly. Gloria's voice broke. He said the scar made him feel weak. He said every time he saw it, it reminded him that he begged someone to save him. He was ashamed, not of you, but of himself. He thought if you came around, you'd see that weakness again. So he cut you off before he could face it. James felt dizzy. "So he rejected me because of pride?" Gloria nodded, crying. He wanted to forget the whole thing, but it ate him up inside. He couldn't rest. Just then, the pastor entered the room quietly. He greeted everyone and walked to John's bed. After praying softly, he turned to James. "Son, there's something you must understand. The day you gave your kidney, a covenant was made between you and your brother. It's not just blood, it's life for life. When he rejected you, he broke that covenant, and that's why he is dying." Everyone was silent. "What can we do?" Gloria asked, trembling. The pastor looked at James. "You are the one who must set him free. Forgive him from your heart. Speak the words. Until you do, the curse will not break." James felt his chest tighten. He thought of the long nights he went hungry, the pain in his body, the humiliation in front of James's office, the silence, the rejection. He thought of how much it hurt to love someone who acted like you never existed. Tears filled his eyes. For the first time since it all happened, he cried. Not small tears, but heavy, painful ones. Then he walked to John's bed, placed his trembling hand on his brother's chest, and said quietly, "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I want to be free. You took my kindness and turned it into shame, but I won't carry your punishment anymore. I give you peace. I give you back your life. May God judge between us." As soon as he said the words, John's body began to shake. He screamed and twisted on the bed. The pastor held him and prayed loudly. Gloria fell to her knees, crying. After a few minutes, John stopped shaking. His body went still. Then he opened his eyes slowly. His breathing calmed. His face looked peaceful. "The voices, they're gone," he whispered. James stepped back, breathing hard. The pastor smiled gently. "It is finished." James didn't say another word. He turned and walked out of the room, out of the house, out of everything that once broke him. He didn't wait for thanks. He didn't wait for gifts. He just walked away, his heart finally light, his soul clean again. For the first time in a long while, James felt peace. He had lost much, his strength, his work, his pride, but he had gained something better, freedom. And in the days to come, that freedom would open doors he never imagined. Because sometimes the reward for forgiveness is not money or apology, but peace that nothing in this world can buy. The morning James left his brother's house was quiet and heavy. The air carried a sadness that words could not describe. John stood by the window, watching as James packed the last of his small bags into an old taxi. The sky was clear, but it felt like rain might fall again. James turned slightly before entering the car. For a moment, their eyes met. Two brothers who had shed the same blood but walked different paths of pride and pain. No words were spoken. James simply nodded once, then entered the taxi and left. The sound of the engine faded into the distance, leaving John standing alone in the compound, lost in his thoughts. That day, John made a decision that surprised even him. He sat in the sitting room, holding a check in his hand. The amount written on it was 5 million naira. It wasn't to buy peace or erase the past. It was his way of saying thank you. Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for still being my brother after everything I did. Later that evening, he called a driver and sent the check to Port Harcourt with a short note. "For your workshop, thank you for the second chance, John." When James received it, he sat for a long time, just staring at the paper. He wasn't a man of luxury, but he understood the gesture. It wasn't about the money, it was about remorse. Quietly, he smiled to himself and said, "At least he's learning." With that money, James decided to give his mechanic workshop a new life. For years, he had worked with limited tools, spanners with broken handles, a rusted engine jack, and a leaking roof that let rain pour in during storms. Now, with the 5 million naira, he changed everything. He repaired the roof, bought modern tools, painted the walls blue and white, and even put up a small signboard that read, "James Auto Care, quality you can trust." When the workshop reopened, customers began to return. Old clients who had missed his honesty and new ones drawn by the clean look and friendly reputation. Every morning, James arrived early, cleaned his tools, prayed silently, and started work with a calm heart. Life became peaceful again. He didn't have much, but he had peace, and that was enough. One bright afternoon, as James was tightening a bolt on the customer's car, he heard the sound of a powerful engine approaching. He raised his head, wiped his hands with a rag, and looked toward the gate. A shiny black SUV parked in front of his workshop. The door opened and out stepped John. He looked different, still well-dressed, still wealthy, but his face carried humility this time. There was no pride in his eyes, only a quiet respect. "Good afternoon, brother," John said softly, walking closer. James didn't reply. He simply continued working, pretending not to hear. His hands moved steadily, fixing the car, but his heart beat faster. John stood for a moment, uncertain of what to say next. Then, without another word, he picked up a broom that leaned by the wall and began sweeping the floor. His expensive rich watch glistened under the sun as he worked. The other mechanics stopped what they were doing, staring in shock. "Sir, you don't have to do that," one of them said quietly. But John shook his head. "It's fine. I came to help my brother." James said nothing. The next day, John returned again. This time, he came even earlier. He parked his SUV outside, rolled up his sleeves, and helped arrange the tools. He fetched water, cleaned car parts, and attended to customers. His designer shoes got soaked with oil, but he didn't care. When customers arrived, they were stunned. "Is that not Chief John?" one whispered. "The rich businessman." Another laughed softly. "What's he doing in a mechanic workshop?" John only smiled. "I'm just helping my brother," he said each time. For 3 straight days, he came to the workshop. He worked quietly beside James, sometimes handing him tools, sometimes writing down customers' phone numbers. He never complained, never tried to explain himself. He just served. On the 3rd day, as the sun was setting, James finally paused. He turned slowly and looked at his younger brother. Sweat ran down his face, and his white shirt was now brown from grease. "Why are you doing this, John?" James asked, his voice calm but firm. John dropped the rag he was holding and looked up. "Because I was wrong," he said simply. "Because I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm still thankful you gave it. You gave me your kidney, James. You gave me life. You forgave me even when I hurt you. But I can't rest until I've shown you that I've changed." Silence filled the air. Even the other mechanics stopped what they were doing. James stared at his brother for a long time. The same brother who once shouted at him, looked down on him, and abandoned him in his weakest moment. Slowly, James removed his oily gloves, walked up to John, and stood before him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, with a deep breath, James reached out and pulled John into a tight embrace. The mechanics clapped softly. Tears rolled down John's face as he whispered, "Thank you, brother. Thank you for forgiving me again." James patted his back. "I was angry, yes, but I could never hate you. You're my brother. I just needed to see that you truly meant your words." "I do," John said, wiping his eyes. "I will never forget what you did for me. You gave me my kidney and still gave me peace. I was blind, but God opened my eyes." That day, they closed the workshop early. The two brothers sat outside on a small bench, watching the sun set. The air was calm, the world quiet. "Do you remember when we were children?" James said with a smile. "You would always follow me everywhere, even to the river." John laughed softly. "Yes, you would always warn me not to fall into the water, but I never listened." "Some things never change," James said, shaking his head. "But I'm proud of you, truly." John looked at him with gratitude. "No, James, I'm proud of you. You taught me what love and forgiveness really mean." As evening settled, Gloria called them on the phone, happy to hear that they were together again. "God has answered my prayers," she said joyfully. In the weeks that followed, John continued to visit the workshop, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Sometimes he helped, other times he just sat and talked with James about business, family, and life. And they even started a plan to expand the workshop together. One would manage finances, and the other would handle the repairs. The people in the neighborhood admired them. They said, "Those brothers are examples of peace." One Sunday morning, the two of them went to church together. During testimony time, John stood up before the congregation and said, "I once allowed pride to destroy my home. I hurt my brother deeply, but he forgave me and even gave me life. I'm here today because of his heart. I've learned that pride kills, but love restores." The whole church clapped, and James smiled quietly from his seat. Months passed and peace returned to their lives. The bond that had once been broken was now stronger than ever. They worked, laughed, and even started helping young mechanics who couldn't afford tools. Sometimes, after closing the workshop, James and John would sit together under the same mango tree where they once quarreled, sharing stories, laughter, and lessons about life. One evening, James looked up at the sky and said, "You know, John, sometimes pain is the only way God teaches us humility." John nodded. "You're right. I just thank God I didn't lose you before learning that lesson." James smiled. "You didn't lose me. You only found me again." They both laughed quietly, the sound mixing with the evening breeze. From that day on, John never allowed pride to enter his heart again. He treated his brother with respect and love, and together they built a small foundation that trained young people in car repair, teaching them honesty and hard work. They named it the James and John Foundation, Brothers in Grace. Years later, when people spoke about them, they didn't just talk about their success. They spoke about their story. Two brothers who went from hatred to healing, from pride to peace, and from pain to forgiveness. And every time John looked at his brother, he silently thanked God for giving him another chance to love right. Moral lesson: never allow pride to destroy what love has built. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is strength that heals the soul. No matter how far pride pushes you away, humility can always lead you back home. Family is not perfect, but it is priceless. Cherish it while you still can.